Death, impermanence, letting go can be transcendent. That was mind-blowing to me. So I was a graduate student and I met a social worker, very lovely guy, and he himself was HIV positive and then actually developed AIDS. And this is well before the cocktail and any antidotes were available. So it was a very scary time. And so he and I decided to do a study because he was also very interested in meditation and some of the effects. So we put together a program of 8 weeks where we did some mindfulness practices to help stabilize the mind. And then we slowly added in at least one version of the death meditation, dissolving through earth, water, fire, air, gross to subtle thoughts, sensations, etc. And really bringing people through the death practice to stillness. We, in anticipation of this, we had the preconception, the thought that, okay, our hypothesis is that people are really going to be scared about dying and that this would be an exposure to help people with approaching dying. In fact, when we collected the data and had interviews with people, we found out that that was not the main focus of their concern. That dying was okay, but at the moment of death, the question was part of the mind looking back and wondering, how did I live? What were my values? Did I really live and do and act in accordance with what I really value most? And the greatest regret was not having done what you really want to do, what you really believed and valued, which is fascinating insight. And that's important to understand the context for each and all of these concepts and practices. So in Tibetan Buddhism, one of the things that was so surprising to me as a 21-year-old when I encountered it, especially with Tibetans, was the idea that decay, death, impermanence, the loss of this body and mind, for most people would actually be something that's terrifying and induce lots of fear and sadness, right? That's our culture. What I noticed there was that actually just the opposite, that death is a basis for generating a state of mind that could be blissful, awesome, curious, transcendent. So that's part of the context where, so for example, one little practice that is easy to do and the Tibetans do it, you could think of every time you are going to sleep, you have a cup. And at the end of the day, just before you go to sleep, you turn the cup upside down. And you remind oneself, I'm going to sleep, and I may or may not wake up. So what is my true intention? You go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, I am awake. Take the cup and turn it right side up to approach the oncoming day. Another day, another opportunity to train the mind. Another thing is to, whenever we see signs of death or impermanence, we also generate a mind where we wish that person well, or that animal well, or that person's mind be free of suffering. Things that reflect impermanence and death throughout the day can actually be a reminder to bring the mind back to a powerful essential state. For example, understanding the emptiness of death, or the understanding of the intimate interdependence of all things. And neuroscience is actually very helpful here, interestingly. There's the word apoptosis, which is a process of how a cell dies. And death of cells is a fundamental principle that allows other cells in the brain to really flourish. So that's fascinating to think that the impermanence of certain parts of my own mind, body, cells, neurons, allows other cells to flourish, which is, in one way we call it pruning. that happens during development. But that's a very fundamental principle that for re-energizing and reinforcing the cells that we do need to exist. As a practice, when I think about it, this is something I do sometimes with doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals, to think that when they're about to enter a room where there's a patient, right, to pause even for one cycle of the breath at the threshold before going in, to really align myself. What's my motivation for taking the next step? This is a moment where this person may live, they may not live, they may be terrified. What's my role here? And even on a deeper level, especially for healthcare professionals in a hospital, or even soldiers or firefighters, to see death as a natural state of having lived, instead of as a failure. So many healthcare professionals question all of this. They see losing someone's life as a failure of not being able to save them, when in fact, a whole other perspective is, how could I usher people into understanding that death is actually a normal state, and perhaps even for some people, freedom from current suffering of body and mind. So another aspect about death could be that the ability to understand that how death creates space for the mind to be even more creative, to arise in a different form, to see things differently. And I'll give you a very interesting example. I was interested in doing a research study on death. I did not do it, but I found an amazing set of photographs by a photographer, I believe in Switzerland, maybe a decade ago, where he got permission to take a photograph of a person who knew that they were approaching death while they were alive, and then the same person again dead. So you saw the same person with that alive vitality and now dead. And you see the physical form, the shape of their face, the appearance. And that's a wonderful contemplation. Like, what is the essence behind the external form? And why is that I see this person is alive and this person is not alive? That's a very powerful practice.